Well, we're working on our sand fluffer a little bit this morning, and here's where we're at so far. So, I've already previously formed the chute, got my pieces on there. Now I heated it a little bit more, and I clamped it in place, hopefully form it a little bit. And this is pretty much where it's going to sit, right here. So, before I disassemble this part to start doing any welding or cutting or anything on it right now, I'll probably go back and I'll drill a couple of holes in each side just for 1/4 inch bolts, and that'll at least give me alignment for where I want to set it. So the plan for this now is this crossbar here. All this is doing right now is setting the spacing between the two bars so we're parallel to the bottom. We're basically parallel. I mean, this is not rocket science here. So if we're close, that's all I really am after right now. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut it right here at this point, and I've marked it. And the reason for that is this is the maximum overall length that I want from the top of it, including whatever we use for a hanger. Right now I've got it hung from a chain up here, but for whatever I use from a hanger down to this point. So this is the distance that when I hang it on my molding bench, why I can still have the lid on and have this hung over it. This gives me the distance I need to where I'll be, as I dump sand back in or fluff sand back into the bin, why this is as close as I can get down into the bin and still, you know, keep the sand in basically and have everything working. So it'll be a little bit lower. Probably when it's hanging there, it comes down to about here. So as you've seen on my molding bench, why I've got a couple of crossbars up on top just for hanging stuff. And if you haven't seen that video, I'll put a link up here someplace in the description, up here, wherever it is. Anyway, so I'm going to cut those off there. Will be when I disassemble it next time. That's it, because this is going to be the maximum overall length. So, and that was the plan all along. I had these, you know, these angles I just left long to do that. So this is where my hopper is going to sit. And we had a pulley on here, of course, which was non-functional. I need to build a universal joint for that. And what I'm going to do is just a collar that will lock onto there with a keyway in it. And we'll probably do a steering type of fiber joint, just like old Foundry man has on his sand fluffer. He uses leather. I'm going to use a couple of layers of belting, and we'll see if that's strong enough long term or if we have to replace it. But we'll put a collar with 2 flanges out where I can bolt on either side on this side, and then on the main shaft we'll have an opposing set of bolts, so they're at 90 degrees rotated around. You know, there'll be one on the bottom, 90 degrees, one on the top, next 90 degrees, one on the bottom, the last one will be 90 degrees, one on the top. So a bolt up there, and that's going to be the next thing to do, is to get the shaft set up. Now I've got some angle iron that I planned on bolting on, welding on, probably bolting on, because this is going to have to be assembled in a certain manner, otherwise the bearings are not all going to fit the way I want them to go on there. So this will be up as high as I can get it, and I'm going to mount my first bearing here. And the components that I'm using for this, as much as I can, are components that I've got laying around. I'm planning on buying little or nothing for this if I possibly can. So when I disassembled my other sand muller, why, of course, I've saved those shafts. So this is the main shaft that was on the old muller, and it's been turned partially down to fit bearings and top and bottom, and that's what we're going to utilize. So I'll have to adapt this to my collar on the back. Then it's going to go into one of the bearing cartridges that I used for the pivots on the inside of the sand muller. And originally they were cartridges like this, and this one I taped up so I don't lose any of the pieces. And I'm going to modify these a little bit, but anyway, I've got a wheel bearing on one side, and it bolted up. It was sealed and bolted up on one side, and then on the other side I've got a UHMW. This was a dust shield, and we've got another bearing assembly just like this on this side. So, and I'm going to utilize both of these to a certain extent. Now on the top, I've already cut down the other little cartridge that I had, and we've got our bearing on top. These all have to be cleaned up, of course, and re-greased and all of that. But what I plan on doing is mounting it on top of, it won't be angle iron just for the sake of angle iron, because we won't get alignment, which is why I want to build the shaft and the universal joint next, so I can center it up down the column, and we'll adjust where our bearings are going in relation to that and how we mount it. But anyway, I'm going to mount it up here, and on top I'm going to weld this cartridge, and wherever this goes, whatever spacing I need. And that's going to help me hold the alignment off of this, right off of the shaft. So we'll get that aligned as much as we can. And I'll just weld that on top of whatever mounting I've got, front and back, to support it. and probably on the top of this shaft we'll probably put a collar. I may put a threaded collar on it. I don't know exactly how I'm going to address that yet, because I'll have to be able to have my shaft come up and attach to the joint on the top, and yet still be supported by this bearing. So that's what I'm going to put on the top. Our shaft will come on down through here, and then we're going to take and we'll put a seal on top, some sort of a metal shield, a plastic shield to go over, something like that. I don't know that I'm going to use grease seals per se, or bearing seals on them. I may on the bottom, and we'll just see how it lays out. The bottom one's still going to have some sort of a more protective covering to keep the sand as much as we can out of the bottom. So it may get a regular grease seal. These may be remachined to a certain degree to adapt to whatever we get when we get down here. On the bottom, I'm going to do the same thing, except I'm going to use both bearings, because I feel we're down far enough now. I want to continue that alignment, and I want to support it on both sides, so top and bottom. And then we'll there again probably bolt in our cross members with the mountings welded to them. That way we can disassemble that part of it. Hopefully this is going to be kind of a puzzle going back together until I actually figure that part out. And this is kind of engineering on the fly. You know, we'll design it as we go, and hopefully I won't screw up along the way. And then at the bottom I've got my little solid piece of steel that we'll screw on there. It'll have our bolts sticking through the side, you know, probably 2 rows of 6 each, 5 each, some oddball number to really beat the crap out of that sand as it goes down through. And then we'll have a belting shroud around the bottom, so it goes through and comes to that far, or even a little bit farther. But anyway, our mixer, or our little stirring assembly, will sit right there and spin with our belting around it to do that. So, and we may put some sort of a metal shield around the outside of that, just to make sure nothing bad happens. So anyway, we'll get to that when we find it. Those are little niceties along the way. For our handle on here, I do have one of my castings that I had already showed that I was going to do. This was originally steady rest casting, and what I'm going to do is just bore the inside to match this contour, whatever we need there. We'll cut this and we'll machine them to where it bolts on around, probably up here, around the bottom of our chute there. And we'll open this up so we've got a bigger handle. And I can either, I'm not sure I'm going to do either or I may do both, is I'll probably put a constant on switch, just so if we're mulling and doing, why that'll work there. I may put a momentary button on here too, so that I've got a thumb switch. But anyway, this is swing it around, move our thing, you know, something that you probably don't need, but something that I can do, so we'll include it into this project. As I said before, 3,200 RPM motor, that's my only concern. That's spinning awful fast for what we want. I would have preferred a 1720 or 1750 motor, but this is what I had, so this is what we're going to use. We'll probably add a couple of holes down here, or a chain link, something that way, so that I can run it back to the edge of the sand muller type of thing on one or both sides. That way, under the inertia, it's not wanting to spin out of control. You know, we can kind of anchor it in place on the back sides if that's necessary. But we'll do something there. But that's kind of the general layout. Well, not a whole lot accomplished today. This is got some done, but of course never as much as we'd like. So anyway, this is my little adapter. This is going to be my spindle. I've still got to set it up in the mill and cut these edges. And a few things to do on it yet. But this slides up on the motor shaft. So we'll slide it up on there. Our adapter will fit here. And we've got a nice sliding fit. So does that show us something here? We got a nice sliding fit there. Not any play to speak of. So we're going to go ahead. I'm going to cut these outer contours right along here to match the outside profile, pretty close anyway. And then we'll take it over the TIG welder. I relieved this edge, so we'll weld it back in there, and then we'll weld the end. Then we'll chuck it back up in the lathe, and we'll face off this end so it's nice and true with axis of rotation. And then we'll set it up on the little Atlas shaper, and we'll go ahead and cut our keyway through there to match. And this is the keyway that was in the motor shaft to start with, so we'll use it. And we'll just cut our keyway in there, probably on one long edge like this, and we'll bolt it up against the angle plate that I just finished here the other day and probably haven't done a video of yet. But that'll all be a project for tomorrow. So I'll get around and finish that up tomorrow. It's a beautiful day out, so the rest of the afternoon I've got one little errand to run. I'll go see a gentleman I know about half an hour away down the road. So I'm going to pull the big bike out, and we'll probably rinse it off because it's always nicer to be riding down the road on a nice clean bike. And I'm going to spend the rest of the day enjoying the day. So anyway, I will see you tomorrow when we go back to machining this. Well, we've been working on the little universal joint, or the adapter that's going to go on the shaft of the motor, and this is what we've come up with so far. I turned my little back piece, and this is a nice sliding fit over the motor shaft, and of course it'll mount on the motor shaft just like this. This will be the top half of it we'll do. I've cut another mating surface like this, and this will still be contoured and everything, but made another mating surface like this so it'll set when it's done in whatever configuration. This will mount on the main shaft going on down. It'll mount in that orientation right there with some belting in between, so to give our little universal joint. And what I did is I beveled the end of it, and I've beveled the inside of this. So we TIG welded around here to fill this joint, and then we TIG welded on the end, and we set it back up in the lathe, faced this off, and made sure that we still had a good sliding fit. So we need a keyway in here, so that's what we're setting up to do here on the little Atlas shaper. And this is the key that was on the motor shaft, so we're going to utilize the same key. And what I've done is I've taken my little angle plate that I cast. We've got video of this, but we've got it all machined and squared up, and I just now took it over to the mill, and then we notched out this so it will clear here. We're going to mount it just like that, so it's centered up flat and fairly level, and we're just going to clamp it in place with 2 clamps of some sort. I thought about drilling and tapping it, but I don't think it's necessary and may not be strong enough in aluminum plate, so we're just going to clamp it in position. Then we'll orient it and go ahead and see if we can't cut our keyway here. So let's see how this is going to go. I've already got the angle plate mounted to the table. It's squared up, true to the world, and bolted down. And I think we'll just use a couple little cant twist clamps. We just want to mount this flat. Now to cut our internal keyway, we've got our little shaft right here. It's got our cutter bit on the bottom, and this plate here mounts up here so that it will not flex up, or so that it will not rotate up to clear. So we're actually dragging on the back cut, but it keeps it aligned and stops it from coming up against the top of the bore and fouling it. Because if we were to run it on through when the tool bit came through, it could potentially come through, raise up, and either the set screw or the back of the lathe bit, tool bit, in whatever, if it was protruding above, could potentially hang on there. So we've just locked it in that position. And let's see if we can't get this clamped on. And just so we're clamped securely and centered in the bore, that's all that's really important with this setup. There's no rocket science here. We'll try and get it fairly level. That looks pretty good. We'll see if this is going to be a rigid enough setup to cut this, or if we have to do something else. So let's raise our table. Actually, we want to raise this up so we've got a little bit of downward motion. I had it pretty well quite a ways down. good right there. And let's see, I can't reach around the camera and do everything all at once. Let's rotate this through. We're going to be too high. Okay, I'm going to go ahead. It's going to take me a couple minutes. I'm going to set the support foot back down so we're solid there, and check alignment, and then we'll come back and see how we're doing. I think we've got a pretty good setup here. We're clamped in place. I've got my tool bit set. We're centered up. We want to go 120 deep and 235 wide. So I'm sure we'll go down a ways and we'll have to move it side to side to get it cleared. It'll start, but not quite. Now I'll bet she'll go. I'll blow that out again. Oh, it's right there. We could stone that key and it would work. Let's give it just a little bit more. That's it right there. That's so close. I'm not gonna fight that any more than that. So let's get her out of here and see what it looks like. Okay. So I can look down in there. Someplace I've got a flashlight in my little pocket here. And it looks just about like that. Here's our little collar, our little, whatever we're going to call it, coupler, I guess. Universal joint coupler. So here we are. Our keyway's installed. It's a tight fit. And here's the keyway on our shaft down here. It's going to go on just like that. And right on up. Now this is all I'm going to do on it today. Tomorrow I'll finish it out. But we'll take and drill a couple of holes for set screws. Drill and tap 2 holes for set screws in there so that we can lock it onto our shaft. And you know, of course we want all this to be a nice fit. So we're going to do that. Then the next thing is we'll start on the main shaft. We'll take and figure out how long we want it, cut it, and get the figure out what we're going to do the end. Now I would speculate, let me reach around here and grab the shaft. I would speculate what I'm going to do is we will shorten it to whatever's appropriate, turn whatever end we need to, up or down, or however we're going to do it. But I think we'll probably cut us another collar, just like this one, and we'll fix it very similar, you know, onto this piece, onto the other half of the coupler. So we'll end up with a piece very much like this, but I think I'll probably thread the inside of it, and then we'll cut it for a keyway too. But then we'll match that on the shaft, because we're going to have to get our bearing assembly back down over the shaft underneath it, and then a collar. So depending on how we set it up, we may thread it a fair amount to go down there and have a threaded collar that will sit on top of our bearing assembly. And then we'll be able to just thread our upper coupler on there, put a keyway in, and lock it the same way with 2 set screws. So we'll be able to disassemble it if we need to. And that's probably how we'll address the other half of that coupler. And then, as I said, the bearing assembly will slide down over the top, and we'll probably run it down to, and it goes on that way of course, but it'll probably run down to a shoulder like this for it to, let's see, do we need to do that? No, we don't need to run it to a shoulder, we just need to run it down so we can actually put this wherever we want, because we'll have our crossbars going on here that this will be welded to. So with our race in here, that's all the farther it will go down. We'll have that slide up through, and that will be the fixed length. Then we can put a threaded collar down on top to lock it, and we'll have to integrate a dust shield into it, or a dirt shield, to go over the top to keep crap from getting in the top of it. And then we'll be able to thread the upper half of the coupler on. So that's kind of the plan. So we'll see how much progress we can make on that tomorrow. And hopefully you found that a little bit interesting. And if you did, I'd appreciate it if you'd hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. And comments or suggestions, leave in the comment section for me below. And as always, thanks for taking the time to watch.